The laws of the world don't apply to him, and we could rely on his morality, but he has no morality.
You know how some nights are all about glamour and celebration? Well, at the Golden Globes, something happened on the red carpet that was completely different. It was this really raw, uncomfortable moment that ended up revealing a huge story happening hundreds of miles away. A story about conflict, protest, and a tragic death. So there's Mark Ruffalo, right in the middle of all this Hollywood glitz, and he looks distressed. He tells reporters straight up, "I'm feeling sick. I can't BS anymore." And you can just feel how jarring that is. You've got all this glamour and then this raw, unfiltered honesty. It was totally unexpected, completely off script. And that just makes you wonder, right? I mean, why would a huge star like him, on what's supposed to be one of the biggest nights of his career, risk it all to say something like that? What could possibly be that important? Well, the clue wasn't just in what he said. You had to look closer. At his jacket. He was wearing this pin, and on it was a name, Renee Nicole Good. And according to him, she was a woman who was, and he used this word specifically, murdered in our streets. That little pin, that's the key to this whole thing. So that pin, it takes us all the way to Minneapolis, a city that was, at that moment, completely unedged because of a fatal encounter. Okay, so what exactly are we talking about here? The incident at the very center of this is the death of Renee Nicole Good. She was 37, and she was shot and killed by an ICE agent, that's Immigration and Customs Enforcement, in a suburb just outside Minneapolis. And this is where things get really complicated, because right away, you have two completely different stories. The official account from federal officials is that Renee Good was trying to, in their words, mow down agents with her SUV. But then you have protesters and people who are there on the scene, and they're calling it murder. I mean, those two versions of the story just cannot exist at the same time. And from there, things just escalated fast. After the shooting, protests started popping up, and those protests were met by law enforcement with tear gas and pepper spray. The tension got so thick that the state of Minnesota actually put the National Guard on standby because they were worried about even bigger civil unrest. So to really get a handle on what happened, we need to look at the people involved, because this isn't just about an incident, right? It's about two people whose lives crossed paths in a really tragic, fatal way. First, at the heart of the protest is Renee Nicole Good. She was 37 years old. And the agent who fired the gun, his name is Jonathan Ross. He's an Iraq war veteran and a member of one of ICE's tactical teams. Now, when you look at the agent, the picture gets more complex. On one hand, his family describes him as a committed Christian and a tremendous father. But on the other hand, you look at his professional record, and there's a really key detail. He had been hospitalized before after being dragged by a car during a stop that sounds a lot like this one. Now, that doesn't solve anything, but it definitely adds another layer of context to what happened that day. Okay, so this brings us all the way back to Mark Ruffalo on that red carpet, because for him, what happened in Minneapolis wasn't just about one tragic shooting. No, for him, it was a sign, a symptom of a much, much bigger problem in the country. He made this argument that this is about a country where, and this is his word, stormtroopers are terrorizing citizens. I mean, that's a really powerful and, let's be honest, controversial term to use. He's basically framing law enforcement as some kind of occupying army. And he didn't stop there. He connected it directly to the economic problems so many people are facing. His whole point was, look, you've got this super aggressive policing going on, and at the very same time, you have families who can't even afford to pay rent or get health care. So really, what it all boils down to is this. He was refusing to pretend that any of this is normal America anymore. He was using his massive platform to shout that this combination of aggressive policing and people struggling just to get by, that's not something we should ever just accept. And that brings us to the last part of this whole story, the role of a celebrity in all of this. You know, the power of that platform, what the protest is really about, and how we, the public, take in that message. Now, as for what happened to Renee Nicole Good, that story is definitely not over. Beyond all the protests and the headlines, there's an official investigation going on right now, and it's being handled by the FBI. So that kind of leaves us with this big question to think about. Look, Mark Ruffalo used his huge platform to make sure we all heard the name Renee Nicole Good, and it worked. But it also raises this bigger question for all of us, doesn't it? When a famous actor uses their voice like a megaphone, Where does their voice stop? And where does the real story actually begin?
Convicted by a federal jury. In regards to the latest incident surrounding Ross, DHS Secretary Kristi Noem said he had acted